What is going on, everyone? My name is the California Cougar, and welcome back to another episode of the Survivor Season Review Series. Today we are talking about the 38th season of Survivor Edge of Extinction. Yes, we are finally back to that point where we are at Survivor Edge of Extinction. I've talked about Survivor Edge of Extinction a couple times on this channel before. Mainly about the ending, about things that went down, but yeah, today we are talking about Survivor Edge of Extinction in full. So basically the concept of Edge of Extinction is once you are voted off or voted out of the game, then you have a choice. Either you can leave the game or you can grab the torch and go to the Edge of Extinction, and basically you could stay out on Edge of Extinction up until there was a challenge. There would be one challenge between everyone on Edge of Extinction to get back into the game. The winner gets back into the game, and along the way, players on Edge of Extinction have a chance to earn certain advantages and whatnot. So yeah, that's basically how the Edge of Extinction works. And of course, if anyone ever wants to leave the Edge of Extinction, they decide they're done with the Edge of Extinction and they just want to leave, they would leave the game entirely, but they could go out, they could raise a sail, and yeah, they could go out, they could raise a sail and leave the game. They would leave the game entirely. So that's the concept of Edge of Extinction. Now, the way this season played out, or first of all, I should talk about the cast a little bit. The cast was interesting. You have 4 returning players and 14 new players, so 18 players total. 4 of them are returning players, 2 on each tribe. There were 2 tribes. There was the Kama tribe and the Manu tribe. And yeah, that's basically how the cast works. So the way this season played out was very controversial, to say the least. And it's very easy to see why. This season as a whole, man, it could have been a very enjoyable season. It could have been very enjoyable. I was actually quite entertained by it for a lot of it. The problem was, all those entertaining moments were entirely pointless. And that's just because there were so many flaws with the Edge of Extinction that it ultimately puts a huge dent in the season as a whole. For some people, it completely ruined the season. And I can understand why. Because the way this season played out is you have like all this gameplay going on in the game. And then the winner ends up being somebody who was voted off on day 8. Like, what? We barely even saw him. Like, he was probably the most seen player on Edge of Extinction, but still. But I mean, I gotta talk about the rest of the season. I've touched on this before, but I'm gonna touch on the rest of the season here. So, starting off with the cast. This cast is actually not too bad. There are some entertaining characters here. You have Reem, who was the gatekeeper of Edge of Extinction, essentially. She would welcome or not welcome certain players to the Edge of Extinction. First of all, everybody went to the Edge of Extinction, which I'm happy about. Every player out there wanted to play, and they wanted to take every opportunity that they had, so they all grabbed the torch, went to Edge of Extinction for a chance to get back in the game. 2 players would later raise the sail and leave the Edge of Extinction, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, you have Reem, right? A player who's not physically strong, but she was just the gatekeeper to Edge of Extinction. She was funny. Kind of like a Philip Shepard type of character. Guilty pleasure. Funny. Like, she was never going to win the game. Like, we all knew that she was never going to get back in the game. She was never going to win after she was voted off. But, like, she had this attitude to her that was absolutely hilarious. Like, screw my tribe. I'm going to just annihilate everybody on my tribe that comes here. People like Chris and Rick Devens that go there. Like, she just lays into them. War Dog, she lays into him as well. That was just hilarious. So she acted as a gatekeeper to Edge. That was funny. Keith, he was there. That's really all I can say about him. He did find an advantage on Edge of Extinction, but that's really the only thing he did. He didn't really do much else. Chris, Like, we'll get more on him later, but he was the one voted off on day 8, and then he ended up coming back and winning the game. More on that later, but ultimately a fatal mistake proved to be the reason he sent himself over to Edge. He was just playing super hard. He wanted to get rid of Kelly Wentworth at the third tribal. Didn't end up working out. Rick Devens, we'll talk about him more later. He was the one that would return from the Edge of Extinction at the merge. So yeah, he ended up being the player that he was voted off fourth because he was like, that tribe was just so in shambles. But yeah, he ended up being sent to Edge. Aubrey, one of the returning players from Koron and Game Changers, she ended up returning to this season. Disappointing this season. She really didn't do that much on this season. She didn't really make any impact on the game, and on Edge of Extinction, she didn't really do much out there either. Her blindside this season was fantastic, though. I will say that. Wendy, I mean, she even admitted that she was there just to sabotage people. That's all she was there for. She admitted that. I read an article somewhere that said that. She was there to release the chickens and just wreak havoc. She wasn't there to play. She wasn't there to win. And she was kind of annoying, so I'm glad that she was sent to Edge pretty early on, and then she ended up raising the sail along with Keith. I mean, who really cares? Joe Englund, I mean, kind of a shell of his former self. Still strong at challenges, though. It's just a shame that he didn't go farther in the game. Maybe he would have gone on a super immunity run. His blindside was fine, I guess. It was kind of predictable, though. We all saw it coming. Like, we knew as soon as he lost that first immunity challenge, they were going to get rid of him. But, yeah, I mean, he was fine for what he was. Eric, again, kind of invisible through the first half of the season. I don't know if he ever went to Tribal. That Kama tribe as a whole didn't really do much in the beginning because they were winning so many challenges. They had Joe on their team. Of course they were going to win every single challenge. And then you have Julia Carter. I mean, Julia, again, she was kind of just there for the first half of the game. The second half of the game, she picked up steam, but I will say this, her boot was super entertaining. More on that later. David Wright, another returnee. I mean, yeah, Joe Englund, I already talked about him, but yeah, Worlds Apart, Cambodia, we all know him. David Wright, another returning player from Millennials vs. Gen X. Glad to see him back. Didn't really do as much this season, but he was still a fun player. His alliance with Rick Devens, I thought, was really good. And then Kelly Wentworth, as you guys know, I'm a huge fan of Kelly Wentworth. Absolutely loved her game in Cambodia. She redeemed herself after a poor performance in San Juan del Sur. And then she comes back on this season, and she was fine. She wasn't great this season. She was mostly known for her alliance with Lauren and Wardog. Her bond with those two was really good, I thought. And then she even aligned with Rick Devens later on in the game, and actually earlier in the game as well, she was aligned with Rick Devens. They only got rid of him because there was really nobody else to get rid of. But yeah, like Kelly, Wardog, and Lauren, I loved that trio. That alliance was really good. And it was kind of Wardog that actually ran that alliance. Him and Lauren did more in this game than Kelly did, I feel like. Kelly did find an idol, but she ultimately went out with an idol as well. So there's that. Speaking of Wardog, I mean, for a guy that is a military dude and he seems like he's so strong, he was absolutely horrible in challenges, but he was a fantastic character in the game. He was a fun guy to watch. Kind of like Tony Vlachos in a way. Even Kelly Wentworth mentioned that Wardog reminded her of Tony. But, I mean, he was a fun character to watch. I loved watching him be so terrible in challenges, but so good at the game. It was a shame when he was voted off because, I mean, he did kind of make the fatal mistake of going after Kelly Wentworth at Final 9 or whenever that was. That was kind of a fatal mistake. I think he acted too early, but I mean, he did bring up the fact that a returning player, like every time there was a season with like mostly new players and like 2 or 3 returning players, he did bring up that a returning player was always in the final 3. So, like, he was the first person to ever do that. So I do give him credit for that, which is why he blindsided Wentworth. And Wentworth's blindside was really good. So was Wardog's. Ron Clark, oh, it was so satisfying when he was blindsided. I hated him. I really hated him. He He was so cocky at the merge after getting rid of Joe. Him and his whole comma 6 thing, trying to get everybody to the loved ones visit. Like, he seemed to care more about that than anyone else. Man, I disliked him so much. He didn't do anything for me, and it was so satisfying seeing him get voted off. Aurora, kind of silent for the first half of the game, but then the second half she kind of started playing after Joe was voted off, and I thought she was a fun player. I think she won a couple of immunities, and she was always pretty strong in challenges. So I enjoyed Aurora's game overall, especially in that one immunity challenge where Lauren, like it was her and Victoria, I believe, were still up there. Lauren had collapsed off the challenge. The medical team was there tending to her, and at the same time, Aurora's trying to convince Victoria to step down to show trust, I guess, or try and get her trust back, I guess. Julie was not having any of it, but I was entertained by that. Like, you play to win. Like, Lauren was never going to get medevaced, I don't think. She just collapsed from exhaustion. I think she was fine. So I don't blame Aurora for trying to make a deal there. Now, Lauren, I loved Lauren this season. I thought she was a fantastic player. She did get kind of screwed at the end. But, yeah, I mean, what can you do? She had an idol that nobody knew about until the end of the game. So props to her for that. I think, actually, no, Kelly Wentworth knew about it. Kelly Wentworth was the only one who knew about it. But then, of course, she told everybody on Edge that Lauren had one, and ultimately it kind of screwed Lauren over. Victoria was fun. Kind of an under-the-radar type of player. Again, she was kind of screwed by the Edge of Extinction twist. She had a good shot of winning, I think. I mean, based on what Chris said when he came back from Edge, but yeah. And then you have Rick Devens, obviously the biggest player of the season. Would have won the game had he made the final 3. Julie was just there, I think. She was a very emotional player. She got on my nerves quickly because of that. And then Gavin, he was a good player, I think. Very underrated player. Made the final 3, won a couple of immunities, never had a vote cast against him, as Rick Devens would point out in the final tribal, advocating for him. But yeah, I like Gavin. He was a good player, I think. And he's the player that I would have voted for if I was a juror and I was voting for somebody at that final tribal council. And then there's Chris, of course, who ended up winning the game. So that's the cast. The cast is all right. Let's talk about the Edge of Extinction, right? So, actually, no. Before that, let's talk about some of the moments this season. There are some super entertaining moments this season. Like I said, Aubrey's blindside was great. Wendy's boot was fun. I mean, I feel like that was a case where the 2 tribes go into tribal council to vote off one person, kind of like they did in Game Changers when Malcolm was voted out. They did that again this season, and I feel like that worked because Wendy was just kind of an expendable player. She was just kind of there, didn't really do anything for anybody. She wasn't helping anybody, so they voted her off. So I feel like that kind of worked a lot better than in Game Changers. And again, I mentioned Kelly Wentworth's blindside was fantastic. Let's talk about Julia Carter, right? So Julia Carter's boot, that tribal, I don't think she was in any danger going into that. And then just that tribal completely blew up. I know a lot of people don't like it when people talk at tribals. They whisper and talk with each other and all that. I love it. I think it's good TV. I think it's super entertaining. And, you never know what's going to happen. It makes the tribal a lot more unpredictable, I feel like. So that's why I really enjoyed it. And I had a blast watching it. It was a fantastic moment. And Julia Carter ended up going home. It was yes! It was so satisfying. Another member of the Comma 6 just going down. Yeah, I didn't like that Comma 6 alliance very much, with the exception of Gavin and Victoria, I would say. But yeah, and then you have the whole Cleveland Browns of tribes. I think it was the Manu tribe, or was it the Lesu tribe? I don't remember which one. I don't remember when it was. The tribal swap was after the 3rd episode, I believe. They switched from 2 to 3 tribes. And then, yeah, Kelly called her tribe the Cleveland Browns of tribes after they failed to win any challenges. So I always thought that was funny. I'd be curious to see what she thinks of that now, that the Cleveland Browns are actually good. So, yeah, I'd be curious to see what Kelly has to say now about that. But yeah, like Kelly's blindside was fantastic. I love the War Dog Kelly Lauren alliance. I thought that was fantastic. The Rick Devens David Wright alliance was great. Every other alliance like in this season I thought was really good. The Gavin Victoria connection I thought was really good. And yeah, and then you have like Ron and Julie. That was the one alliance I didn't like because I didn't really like Ron or Julie. And then you have some more blindsides later. Like I talked about Julie Carter. The War Dog blindside was fantastic. Gavin getting on War Dog's case was great. That was funny. Yeah, War Dog sucking at challenges. I mentioned that. And then even towards the end of the game, after Chris came back in, the Victoria blindside was really good. The Lauren blindside, although it wasn't really a blindside, it was just she was the one that didn't have an idol. Yeah, Rick Devens finding idols all over the place. That was great. Him planting 2 fake idols and then baiting Lauren and Julie into finding them. They eventually deduced that one of them was fake, but still, great moment from Rick Devens. Rick Devens was just so entertaining. La Cheeserie! That I don't know what that means, but that was funny after he won an immunity challenge. Yeah, he was a challenge beast. So, yeah, like that was fun. Like, the actual game itself was a lot of fun. And I think if it weren't for the Edge of Extinction, I would probably give this season like a 7 out of 10, honestly. I thought there were so many great moments. It was a good cast overall. The problem is, the Edge of Extinction just drags it down so much. And it makes all those great moments pointless. Literally every single one. So, first of all, the first half of the season with the Edge, I didn't really mind. Like, okay, they found some advantages that could help them out in an Edge of Extinction challenge, where they would compete in a challenge to return to the game. I don't mind that. I think that's fine. Although, a problem I did have was sending advantages to players in the game. I don't really think that's fair, because, like, players in the game just get free advantages out of nowhere. They don't even know how they got it. They didn't really do anything to earn it. They do address this in Winners at War. I'll talk about that in my Winners at War review. But yeah, like in this season, it just wasn't really that fair. Also, the players coming back from Edge of Extinction, they would get an immunity idol where they would have to give half of it to a player for a tribal council, and then after that tribal council, that player could give it back to them, assuming they trusted them enough. But yeah, and then they would have a full idol. And I do think that worked at the merge. I think that worked at the merge. Like, okay, fine. Give Rick Devens a chance to get back into the game, gain the trust of a player. Obviously, David Wright was the player he trusted the most, so he's going to give the half of the idol to David. And then David gave it back after that first tribal council. So that was all fine and dandy. However, here's my problem. After that first Edge of Extinction challenge at the merge, right? Instead of being sent home, the first 5 people voted off. Keith, Wendy, Reem, Chris, and Aubrey, I believe. It was those 5. They got to go right back to the Edge. Like, the 5 of them, they got to go right back to the Edge. Now, Keith and Wendy did pull the flag right after they got back there. I didn't really care for those 2 anyway. Like, neither of them were going to have any chance of winning. So I'm fine that they pulled the flag and they ultimately exited the game. But then you have Aubrey, Chris, and Reem. They're just out there. Like, we know Reem's not going to win, but Aubrey and Chris, I think, have a legitimate shot if they get back in the game. Like, they're allowed to go right back to the Edge. And then they can continue competing while everyone else arrives on Edge. And then, like, the advantages stuff continued, and then we saw that second challenge. Chris barely beat out Joe Anglum to get back into the game, and then he was given an idol, and that's another problem. He comes back into the game at Final 6, I believe. It's him and 5 others in the game. He gets an idol. And, okay, he has to survive that first tribal, but everyone thought he wasn't a threat because he was out on the Edge, so they're not incentivized to vote him out right away. At least not until, Final 5. So, like, he's allowed to give his idol to Rick Devens, because Rick Devens was the only person he could really work with at that point. So he gives his idol to Rick Devens. Rick Devens gives it back, and then, like, he's just allowed to... And then he has an idol at Final 5. He can just play that idol at Final 5, and then you have the Fire Challenge at Final 4. So it's like, he really only has to win one challenge, even if that. And even if he doesn't, no one's incentivized to vote him out right away. So he essentially has a free path to the Final 4, and then a 50-50 chance of getting into the Final 3, basically. That's really what it comes down to. Now, it's not Chris's fault, okay? This is not Chris's fault. He played the game perfectly after he got back in. He knew about Lauren's idol. He knew that Victoria was a threat to Victoria was a jury threat. He played that perfectly to get those two out of there. He got Lauren's idol offer, and he knew Rick Devens was going to find another idol, so he used that to his advantage. And then he pulled off the ultimate 500 IQ play at Final 4, where he gives up his immunity that he won and decides to take on the biggest threat in the game, Rick Devens, in the Fire Challenge, and gets him out. And that ultimately worked out for him. So credit to Chris where it's due, because he played that finale so well. He did everything he had to do to win the game. And honestly, like, I can understand why so many people on the jury respected that. However, the problem is, he already has, like, 3 guaranteed jury votes with Reem, Aubrey, and possibly Joe. I don't remember if Joe voted for him or not, but Reem and Aubrey are basically guaranteed to vote for him. Aubrey hadn't even met Gavin yet, and neither did Reem. Like, they didn't even meet Gavin or Julie, because they were on different tribes. So those are basically 2 free votes for Chris. So that's a flaw in the game right there. Basically, what I'm saying here is they really should have sent Aubrey, Chris, and Reem home after they lost that challenge. And Wendy and Keith as well. They should have just sent them home after they lost the challenge. And then the rest of the people in the game, plus Rick Devens, could be on the jury. And then if someone gets voted, like say if Joe Englem had come back and won the game, like I would have been a little bit more fine with that. Although, I guess it's kind of a gray area for me as to whether people who get voted off should be allowed to win the game. Like, that's kind of a gray area. If it's toward the end of the game, then, like, okay, fine. Or even if they come back into the game at the merge, like Rick Devens did, then, yeah, fine, okay. They do everything they need to do to win the game. And Rick Devens did that, Chris did that, okay, fine. But, yeah, like, that's a huge problem. They have some automatic jury votes, and, like... And the other problem is, it kind of screwed over Victoria and Lauren. Because Chris did mention that Victoria and Rick Devens were the biggest jury threats. He told everybody that. No, I don't think anybody would have found out that Victoria was a jury threat, at least not right away, if Chris hadn't told him. So, yeah, in that sense, Victoria got kind of screwed over there. And then Lauren, who, like, nobody knew about her idol. Nobody that was in the game knew about her idol. Chris knew about it because Kelly Wentworth told everybody once she got there. So Chris knew about it. And ultimately, like, yeah, Lauren was the first one Chris told that he knew, but still. Like, okay, him getting Lauren to play the idol on Chris, that was a good play. I will say that. That was a great play. And, like, he told everyone that it would impress the jury. So that was a good play, I think. It worked for Chris. I mean, again, Chris did everything he needed to do. It's not his fault that the season ended up being entirely pointless, or that everything in the season that happened up to this point was entirely pointless. It's not his fault. He did everything he needed to do. But there's just so many problems with the Edge of Extinction. The main one being the pre-merge boots all getting a chance to go again. That's a big one. The advantages that people send to people in the game, I think that's another big problem. I don't like that at all. Again, they did fix that in Winners at War to a certain extent. But, yeah. And then the idol advantage, especially at Final 6, that the Edge person gets after they get back in the game. Like, I have a huge problem with that. Like, get rid of that. At the merge, okay, fine. But at final 6, like, basically you're saying they only need to win 1 immunity, or like they basically just get to the final 4, and they're a fire challenge away from getting in the final 3 and just taking up a spot that somebody else like Victoria or a Lauren could have taken up. And plus, I feel like Gavin deserved that win. I really do. Like, he went the whole game, never had a single vote cast against him, won a couple of immunities. So it's not like he wasn't a challenge threat, because he was good at challenges. And he was also good socially. He made relationships with a lot of people. So it's not like he wasn't a threat, because he definitely was. So, yeah, like, the fact that he got no votes was just super impressive, I think. And honestly, I would have given him my vote if I were on that jury. I really would have given him my vote over Chris. Rick Devens would have gotten my vote had he made the final 3. It's a travesty that Rick Devens didn't make it, because he was the biggest character that season, but yeah. So, I mean, if it weren't for Edge, I would have given this season probably a 7 out of 10, honestly. But with all that taken into consideration, and the fact that Chris's win just makes the rest of the season pointless, I gotta give Survivor Edge of Extinction a 4 out of 10. Alright, so there's my review of Edge of Extinction, or Survivor Edge of Extinction. Yeah, such a letdown. Like, that finale was such a letdown. It took away everything that the season could have been and made it entirely pointless. And yeah, I was enjoying the season up until that point, so it was just so disappointing that that's how it turned out. And I want to reiterate, it's not Chris's fault. Like, he did everything he had to do. He played a hell of a game at the end there. But the fact that he was a pre-merge boot, and he had a huge advantage coming back into the game after he did come back into the game, like, it just kind of ruined the moment for me. That's for lack of a better word. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on Edge of Extinction. What do you guys think of Survivor Edge of Extinction? Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of it. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video. And make sure to subscribe to my channel for more content to come in the future. Only 2 reviews left, so stay tuned for those. Island of the Idols and Winners at War are the only seasons left. And then we have to wait a long period for Survivor 41 to come out. We still don't even know what the theme of that season's going to be. So, yeah, 2 more reviews. So once again, make sure to subscribe to my channel for more of that stuff to come in the future. And until that next video, once again, my name is the California Cougar. And always remember to stay California cool. Peace!